What if we told you the Fort Wayne Police Department is in direct violation of one of its own laws? Well, here it is. Fort Wayne City Code says officers have to retire before they turn 60.
But 15 Finds Out has discovered several high-ranking police department leaders over the age of 60. Is this too old to patrol? And what does this mean for public safety and your tax dollars? For those answers, we turn to 15 Finds Out reporter Adam Widener.
This all began with an anonymous tip into the 15 Finds Out hotline. Someone called concerned with an FWPD sergeant who is in his 80s. Yes, a cop over 80 years old. That sergeant declined to be interviewed for our series, and it's important to understand everyone I spoke with on camera says the older officers are capable of doing their jobs. But police union leaders tell me not enforcing this law directly impacts recruits and new ideas in a younger person's game. How old is the oldest Fort Wayne police officer?
I'm going to say 65.
60?
64.
It came as a shock to most people we interviewed around downtown. According to a city leader, the oldest officer on the Fort Wayne Police Department is in his 80s.
It's very surprising.
Wow, really?
Doing it at 80, I give that guy a lot of props.
Indiana State Code says officers must retire by age 70. Fort Wayne City Code is stricter. It says officers must retire by 60. But at least 8 officers are over 60 right now, violating code. They're all sergeants, lieutenants, even a deputy chief. 15 Finds Out has discovered 2 of those violate state code as well, that is, over 70. Public Safety Director Rusty York says one of those officers is in his 70s, another in his 80s. We'll get to why leaders say they haven't enforced the law in a moment. But first, 15 Finds Out has discovered inconsistency has raised concerns for both police unions in Fort Wayne.
This is a young man's game, and if we want to continue to have a viable police force in Fort Wayne, we have to be able to recruit and bring new people in on a constant basis.
Sergeant Mitch McKinney is the president of the Fraternal Order of Police Wayne Lodge 14. He thinks not enforcing mandatory retirement could eventually hurt staffing, and an aging department could deter new recruits.
If we keep a heavy cap of folks who are over the age, then it restricts us from being able to hire more folks. We have many people that can retire at any given time, so we're not backfilling for the people who can go, any day.
In April of last year, 15 Finds Out first reported below average staffing at FWPD in our series, Is Fort Wayne Really a Dangerous Place? Since then, City Council has raised taxes and FWPD started a new recruiting class this year. Another new recruit class is expected next year as well, paid for by a federal grant. Public Safety Director Rusty York expects to be back at full staff after the 2 academies. While McKinney acknowledges the benefit of older, wiser officers, he thinks changing the mandatory retirement age to 67 and enforcing it would make more financial sense as well. For example, Sergeant Bill Walsh is the officer in his 80s. He made about $92,000 last year. And Lieutenant Gerald Mungovan, also over 70, made about $76,000. Most new recruits make about $50,000 after their first year of service.
If we have a mandatory retirement age, once those folks retire, now that releases money to come back, and the city has that freedom to use those monies to hire new people. It's just being fundamentally sound and having fiscal responsibility to make sure we're taking care of the needs of the department and not stacking up our wants.
Sophia Rosales-Scatina is the president of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association. She thinks not enforcing the law makes it tougher for young officers to make an impact in the department.
And when we have people who are in positions that just don't ever seem to go, then it does make it a lot harder for other people to take their place and bring fresh and new ideas into the department. I think as a police department it becomes a little bit hypocritical that we enforce some laws and not others. I think if the law's on the books, we should have to follow it. If we do not want it there, then we need to take measures to take that off of the books.
Every officer on our department right now is capable.
On the other hand, Public Safety Director York does not think aged officers are affecting staffing levels or the budget in a negative way.
These officers who are older than 70 years old are functioning, they're performing their job requirements effectively. So I see no reason to penalize them merely because of their age.
York says the 60-year-old mandatory retirement age hasn't been enforced since the 1980s, years before he was even police chief. City leaders couldn't give a clear reason why it's gone unrecognized. Still, York thinks the little-known mandatory retirement age should be moved to 70 and enforced, while grandfathering in officers who are currently violating both the city and state code.
Should we reconcile the city ordinance? Probably. We should, and we're looking into that.
Now, we looked up the disciplinary history for both of the officers over 70 on the department. Most recently, Sergeant Bill Walsh was suspended for 1 day for alertness on duty in 2005. The city just told me it was because he had the volume on his handheld radio turned down. The latest discipline for Gerald Mungovan, he received a letter of reprimand for obedience to department policies in 2002. It's unclear if age was a factor in either actions. Now, what do you think? Should the city enforce mandatory retirement or not? And how about those two officers over the age of 70? Tonight and starting right now, I'll be looking at the comments you post on our Facebook page and on Twitter. Voice your opinions using hashtag #TooOldToPatrol. Tune in tonight at 11. I'll report your opinions on this topic. Then tomorrow, is a mandatory retirement age even legal to begin with? New tomorrow, 15 Finds Out takes that question to Indianapolis. You'll hear how a leader there says his police department treats the mandatory retirement age and why it's even a law. Live in Studio 15, Adam Widener, News Channel 15.